Hello and welcome back. It's very nice to see you all, and I think everybody here now deserves a round of applause because it's been a long day with many subjects to cover, and you've all shown enormous stamina in still being here, so congratulations to everybody. But it's been a really fascinating day, and now it continues. In commemoration of the fact that this is the 7th anniversary of the earthquake, we now have a session looking at food and water in disaster situations called Beyond the Disaster. And to moderate that, we have Yuko Harayama from the Council of Science, Technology and Innovation. And her panelists will be Mahmoud Abu Zaid, who's president of the Arab Water Council, Naoe Yakiya from the World Food Programme here in Japan, and Virginia Murray from Public Health England. So if you join me in welcoming them to the stage, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome again to all of you. After a very long and intense journey of dialogue today, we are almost at the end of the session. And just before the final one, with Nobel laureate discussion, the flavor of creativity. So please stay alive and keep your very intensive attention to our discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, today is March 11. 7 years ago, the nature reminded us how we, human beings, are vulnerable to the nature, and also how we depend on the nature. Remember, our history of civilization gives us impression that we, as a human being, are kind of dominating or domesticating the nature thanks to the advancement technology and also development agriculture, industrialization, and today, digitalization. But with the Great East Japan earthquake, we learn a lot. Normal daily life, just eating, living, working, usually. It's happened that this normal life could be disrupted suddenly. And what happened on March 11? Personally, I'm formerly a professor in Tohoku University located in Sendai. So all my colleagues suffered by these events. And it's my day today. So in Tohoku area, beside all this injury in human beings and human lives and infrastructures, we recognize that the access to the food and water that you have access to every day was disrupted. It's happened. So, and also we became conscious that food and water are essential goods. You can miss them. How to overcome with a disaster. That's the question we will discuss today. And also, we had to really overcome all the restructuring infrastructure, but also we need to have all the food value chain to be reconstructed. So that's the fact. So today, I will ask to my panelists, and I'm very happy to have all the three women, one man, unusual in Japanese context, but anyway, it's okay. What's the lesson to be learned? And what a message to the future? That's be my main goals. I will ask first to my colleague, Naoe. I know that you have been in just after March 11, within 1 week, you went to Tohoku area. Could you share with us your experiences linked to the food issues and the water issues, please?
Yes, I work for the World Food Program, WFP, and we usually provide emergency support to disaster areas within 48 hours. So I went to Ishinomaki right after the earthquake, and it was really shocking. I saw that cars were on top of cemeteries and a big ship was on the road. So it was really devastating. The key issue was limited supply chain. You may be surprised, but there were so many goods and the food received from overseas and also across the country. But there was not enough transportation mechanism. So I myself went to Ishinomaki by helicopter. So we were asked to provide logistics and transportation storage support to bring and deliver goods from Tokyo and to disaster areas. So we brought a team from other countries, and we dispatched tents and storage materials from our humanitarian depot. We have a humanitarian response depot across the world. So we could provide emergency logistics support immediately. The key takeaway from that experience is that the importance of preparedness and coordination, because there were many goods sitting on the ground, but there was not enough storage and system to distribute, which was a pity because many people were asking for blankets and food, and then there were materials. So if we know what to do, who will do, and if we know the importance of supply chain during the emergency, then we could better respond. And at that time, I also learned the importance of respecting the dignity of the people, because people, even though they are hungry, they cannot eat the same thing all the time. So that was what I learned.
Wonderful. As you say, the preparedness is key, and also we need to have approaches on people-centered approaches. And it's really valuable to have really in time and very real experience. And from this experience, we need to take lesson from that. And first step, and in 2015, based on what happened in Tohoku area, Japanese government decided to host UN big disaster conference in Sendai. And from these conferences, emergence of new thinking about how to deal with disasters. So you, Virginia, could you just explain what is Sendai framework? I don't know, all of you, do you know what is Sendai framework? No, so please explain to all the audience, what is Sendai framework and what's lesson we can take from that?
To be here today, on the memory day, 7 years afterwards, and to be allowed to present the Sendai framework to the incredible work of Japan, your people, your government, is an extraordinary privilege. The loss of life, livelihoods, and health for many was devastating. Sadly, you are not the only country in the world that suffers disasters. In fact, all of us do. We have problems inside the UK. But to have come to the global platform that you hosted in Sendai after approximately 4 years of lengthy negotiations, to be there, to see the delivery, the agreement, the support for the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction that runs from 2015 to 2030 to try and see to the future beyond the disaster of how we can reduce the impact in the future. The framework talks about understanding the risk, about governance, investing, response, recovery, build back better. But it also talks very closely about food security. I quote a statement from it just to give you a flavor of the commitment of the UN member states who adopted and agreed this framework. Strengthen the design and implementation of inclusive policies and social safety net mechanisms including through access to basic healthcare services, including food security and nutrition. Food security and nutrition is key after a disaster. This Nobel Day on the future of food is very much part of the reflections that are needed. The best thing about the Sendai framework is it doesn't work alone. It works with the Sustainable Development Goals, with the Climate Change Agreement, with the WHO Decade of Action on Nutrition 2016 to 2025. It engages many. The implementation of this by the scientists of the world to support the governments at all levels, local, prefectures, regional, national, more widely and globally, is critical. Then we might not be quite so worried about the security of food following a disaster. To me, the kind of disasters that are very frightening include droughts. And I know that the problems, Mahmoud, that you've had in Middle East and North Africa on droughts have been something that have frightened many of us. How do you see the Sendai framework helping you?
So it's a good transition to move to the next panelist. We have a honor to have Mahmoud, and he's expert in water. And I mean, water, foods are interconnected. And also disaster, I started this panel with a Sendai, Tohoku earthquake, but so many disasters around the world. And we have worldwide engagement with Sendai framework. And then what's the practical experiences from your side in Egypt and other countries and related to water and foods nexuses, please.
Thank you very much. Let me first give some of the global disaster trends. In nearly 20 years between 1996 and 2015, there were approximately 7,000 disasters recorded worldwide, which is double the number of disasters that happened during the previous 2 decades. About 90% of these disasters were attributed to climate or weather-related events. This also coincides with the dramatic increase in annual average temperatures, marking previous decades. Displacement associated with disasters is a global issue. Nearly 24.2 million new displacements in more than 170 countries were brought on by sudden onset of natural hazards in 2016. Within agriculture sector, 42% of all damage and losses is in the crop subsector, followed by livestock with 36%. This includes disasters such as extreme climate events of floods, droughts, tsunami, sea level rise, earthquakes, armed conflicts, wars, fires, etc. Let me speak about our region a little bit. The Arab region is a water-scarce region. A lot of countries are using water desalination, treated wastewater, and non-renewable groundwater resources. Water demand and population growth are high and growing. The region's renewable freshwater deficit is approximately about 25%. According to FAO food security indicators, the average value of food production in most countries in the region is below the world average. In the Arab region, agricultural production is already being adversely affected by rising temperatures, change in levels and frequency of precipitation, a greater frequency of dry spells and droughts, the increasing intensity of extreme weather events, and land degradation.
Thank you. Because when we see your experience in Arabic countries, water is not just water, but linked to the other development issues, including agriculture. But also, I think it's a social structure, depend on the accessibility to the water. And I come back to you now, because your institution, World Food Program, is closely linked with water issues and also with the Sendai framework. Could you just explain your activities and then making linkage with the panelists' views?
Yes. Since I was also in various developing countries, maybe I'll pick Myanmar as an example because my colleague already talked about Middle East. And I was involved in this emergency disaster assistance when the flood happened in Myanmar. And disaster is a cause of hunger and food security and malnutrition because some people are displaced and often lose assets and livelihoods. And certainly we, WFP, started providing emergency food assistance. But what I was asked by the disaster-affected woman was that they were living in shelters because they lost houses, but they asked us to support to rebuild their livelihoods at the same time, even during the emergency. So I really felt the importance of resilience, and if people's resilience is built, when the disaster happens next time, they can respond better and the damage is less. So I really feel the importance of resilience at the time of disaster, and even before the disaster. And also, as my colleague also mentioned, we also have to provide a multi-sectoral approach. So to achieve water, health, hygiene, we also have to take care of food and the hunger. So there is this kind of linkage, and I also emphasize again the importance of coordination.
Thank you. I think the resilience is really underlying components of our approaches vis-à-vis disaster to ensure the food and water security. What's your view?
To me, resilience is critical.
Yeah.
And having worked with the ECOSOC major group on science and technology, which is why I've been so involved in all of this, I was really pleased to see the response of the UN family in agreeing the United Nations Plan of Action on Disaster Risk Reduction for Resilience. You've just summarized it so beautifully by practical experience. But to me, if we can get the UN family to support us, along with every UN member state, reporting to the UN General Assembly every 2 years, for every country to feed back on the global targets and indicators, we might begin to understand what's going on, because at the moment, the message is you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And we really need to change our view of making sure we share the data so that we can understand how resilience can come forward. But the heart of this is this incredible Sendai framework. And thank you, Japan, for your leadership. Thank you for your engagement. But thank you for every single country. Egypt was key. Every country of the world helped to deliver this. It is such an incredible thing for scientists to engage with. And actually, the Sendai framework contains more science and technology requests by the UN member states for us to support them. And this is such an important opportunity for us to share this incredible framework and to support our countries in their delivery of it. Thank you.
I know that science, tech, and innovation is really a driver to overcome and to become more resilient. And I think we have just 1 minute, something like that. So I will ask to all of you, and I will start with Mahmoud. What could be take-home messages from this session and message to all of audience and for us too?
Well, first, through its impacts on agriculture and livelihoods and infrastructure, climate change threatened all dimensions of food security. It will expose both urban and rural poor to higher and more food prices. climate change also affects food availability by reducing the productivity of crops, livestock, and fisheries. The availability of data, including climate and socio-economic data, remains a challenge, especially in the Arab region. Better data management, more informed policy making and capacity building are also needed.
I think we are running time, so just,
regional.
Yes, please.
Regional, okay. Last but not least, regional cooperation is critical to address the multiple threats and risks to food security and nutrition, and to build resilience to disasters in the Arab region.
Thank you so much. And just one word from Virginia, one word.
Implement the Sendai framework. What a privilege it is to be a scientist engaged in delivering this. Thank you, Japan.
Seamless support from emergency response to resilience building is key to enhance food security and nutrition.
So thank you to all my panelists, and thank you for listening to us, sharing the idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry to take time.
No, you were very precise. Thank you very much indeed. It was a very important topic to discuss, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. So we come to our concluding panel, and we have a slight change of tone for this one, a slight lightening of the tone. We like to take the opportunity at the end of these dialogues to bring all our assembled Nobel laureates together on stage, and so this panel features all of them. And so may I invite, please, Hans Diessenhofer, Ada Yonat, Finn Shidland, Yoshinori Osumi, and Tim Hunt to come on stage, please. Hans?
Yeah.
Yes, here.
Okay.
Finn? Okay. Yoshinori here. Finn here. Yoshinori here. Tim, if you go at the end.
Okay.
Ada, would you come here next to Finn? Sorry. Thank you very much indeed. Please. And Tim, you seem to be tidying the stage. That's nice.
I don't know what it is, but it's sticky tape.
Might come in
offending
handy.
me.
So many of the problems that we've been discussing today and the questions require creative solutions. And thus it seems like creativity would be a useful thing to discuss at the end of this day. And what perhaps is the source of creativity? And who better to ask that question of than a group of Nobel laureates? So let me begin by asking you, Hans, what is there a recipe for creativity? Sticking with the food theme.
Well, when I got your invitation, I began thinking about this question. And I wanted to find a definition of creativity, preferentially one that would apply to me also.
Yeah.
But it turned out the longer I thought about it, the less I could find it. And I looked at Wikipedia and got more and more confused. So basically, I cannot say what creativity is, but I can tell you a story. I moved to America in early 1988, February or so. And my new laboratory was in a building that turned out to be within 200 meters of 6 current or future Nobel laureates. And so perhaps there is something about the atmosphere, the support the organization in that place that promotes creativity. And also, of course, there are people who are good recruiters and look at their persons very carefully and so on.
But surround yourself with brilliant people, creative people, and it rubs off in some way.
Reverse osmosis.
You remember Jim Watson said you should always try to work with people who are cleverer than you are. It's very good advice.
Yeah.
Ada, what do you feel?
I don't know. I don't know what is creativity. I just learned that I'm not the only one that doesn't know. And why am I an advocate for creativity? I was a curious child from childhood. I even broke my hand when I tried to find the distance from the floor to the ceiling, which was very important for me at the age of 5. And I have evidence that this experiment took place because I had cast afterwards for half a year. But actually I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write books. I wanted to write my thoughts. I had lots of things happening inside me, but didn't come out on the paper very good. When I was 17, I got once in my life a very high grade for a piece that I've written. And the teacher that wrote it, the headmaster, she was really clever. She said, this is once in lifetime. It was once in lifetime. I never could get something as well. Well, maybe when I was 11, my father died. My mother spoke 4 languages, but she couldn't calculate percentage of something. So she came to me to help her. And I thought the only pillar in my life cannot do 5th grade mathematics. So maybe this was something that pushed me. Mm-hmm. But to call it creativity, I'm not sure. During my project that I was working 20 years on it, there were several points that I had to do some things that were not considered realistic or doable by most of the scientific world, including myself. So maybe there I contributed something to creativity.
Well, there's a point in there that you said during 20 or 30 years. I mean, there's a doggedness there that contributed to your creativity, a dogged pursuit of a question. You didn't give up. You kept going.
Yeah. There were two specific points that maybe I'll say some words about. First of all, we crystallized ribosomes. I'm not sure you want to know exactly what it is, but crystals are ordered entities, periodic entities, and people couldn't get it. And I thought that maybe it's because the ribosomes deteriorate while we are trying to crystallize them, because I never could get fully active ribosome when I prepared it according to procedures in the world. And then I was lucky. I had a bicycle accident and a brain concussion, very, very bad brain concussion, because helmets were not known at that time. And while recovering, I read about the bears that go to sleep in the North Pole in the winter.
Polar bears?
A delegation, I think, just touristic delegation went to the North Pole and found out that the ribosomes inside the cells of the sleeping bears are ordered in monolayers, but fully ordered inside the membranes of their cells. So I thought, here, this is the thing. The bears are sensing pressure, and therefore they pack their ribosomes fully, which people could not do in the lab. So all what I have to do is to look for ribosomes under pressure. And I found it in the Dead Sea, in the bacteria that lives in the Dead Sea.
And the point is, it's okay to have a bicycle accident and find yourself reading peripheral material, which then guides you back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the second time, after 6 years that we got reasonable crystals, we went to measure them, and they decayed within the first few seconds while we were measuring. We repeated it 100 times, 100 times in several facilities around the world, in Japan and in the United States, in Germany. And they kept dying on us, disappearing. And then again, I met a friend. Now you have to hear the story.
You have to be quick, though.
Yeah. A scientist that told me that he was working on material that exposed in the air. He could not work on it because it exploded every time. So a student came to him and said, high-duty gear oil will protect your material. And we used this in order to protect it. Again, something that I didn't expect worked.
So ideas from outside. Yep, thank you. We could go down the line. So, Finn.
I'm a little apprehensive about this topic. Just to tell you a parallel, after the Olympics, there was a half-page story in the New York Times about how embarrassed Norwegians are about having won the largest number of medals in the Olympics. Norwegians tend not to make it sound like they make great deeds, or you don't want to be caught saying anything that would sound like bragging. As if I'm creative, that would be like bragging.
I don't want to be too complimentary to Nobel laureates in general, but I'd say that would mean that many Nobel laureates would be honoring Norwegians because they tend to be pretty humble. But anyway, carry on.
There's something to what was said earlier, I think, the environment. So I got my PhD. I got the start on the project that turned into being cited, one of the two cited by the Nobel Committee, while still a student at Carnegie Mellon. Now, at Carnegie Mellon, they now have in one of their hallways 13 photographs of either former students, former PhD students, or former faculty members who hold a PhD. Indeed, there was an award every year called the Alexander Henderson Award for Excellence in Economic Theory. And 4 of the people who won that award, actually over a 13-year period, 4 of them have won the Nobel Prize, and the Nobel Prize was, the 4 of them won it in 6 years. It gives an indication of the kind of environment that existed at Carnegie Mellon at that time. I suppose if I were to say one thing that's important in creativity, it's to have the ability to ask the right question.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
That's why you don't see it that often. And of course you have to have a sense of the relevant data, and especially if you discover anomalies that are not well accounted for by the current theoretical framework. But to have the ability to ask an interesting question, and of course at least making headway on answering it, a question that others will be interested in, that I think that's really the only thing I can say. That's
thank you very much. One thing we've already learned, I think, from the 3 answers we've had is that one source of creativity seems to be a deep consideration of the question, because you've all taken it very seriously. No flip answers from you, but very, very considered. That's an important lesson in itself. Professor Osumi.
Okay. As I told this morning, I'm really sticking on the same project for subject for more than 30 years. And when I started, not so many people interested in autophagy, but now autophagy field become a huge field in this basic biology. So I want to say there, and all my work was just purely curiosity-driven. Of course, motivation for science, usefulness is one of the important factors. But also, just curiosity is most important for science. So I want to say for young generation, you have to keep your naive question to make a new science field, and you don't follow just a popular field. You have better find the really interesting subject you want to know. That's all.
So yes, so you really have to be deeply interested in the question, a question that will sustain you for decades if necessary.
Yeah, I
that's a
so.
Genuine interest. That's no passing thing. That's
Okay.
Tim.
Yeah, I looked. One of my favorite quotations, if I can find it on my Face ID. Oh, come on. So I grew up scientifically speaking, in Cambridge, and which was awash with Nobel laureates in my subjects of biochemistry and molecular biology. I mean, many of the founders of the field were there. And somebody went to ask Max Perutz, who was the head of the famous laboratory of molecular biology, what made his lab so creative. And he gave a very flippant answer, which I won't read out because it takes too long. But then he went on to say, and I think this is interesting, creativity in the science, as in the arts, can't be organized. It arises spontaneously from individual talent. Well-run laboratories can foster it, but, this is the bit I like, hierarchical organization, inflexible bureaucratic rules, and mountains of futile paperwork can kill it. Discoveries can't be planned. They arrive, they pop up like puck in unexpected corners. And I think that's pretty good. So then you have to ask, I mean, following on Finn's thing, where, why is it that certain environments, I mean, is it simply because we don't ask them to do lots of futile paperwork? I think it's a little bit more than that. I mean, it is this sort of obsessional concentration, focusing on soluble problems. I mean, I think that you touched on a very important point, which I often worry about. I think finding a good problem for a scientist or any kind of person is the most difficult thing, actually, because you could easily say that I'd love to know how the brain works. Fair enough, but that's not really a problem. It's not well defined enough. You wouldn't even know when you'd answered it, I think. So it's sort of finding somewhere where you can actually, you sort of feel you're within touching distance with the tools at hand at the time that you're doing it.
So if one translated that into advice for young people, and for instance for the Hope students who are here, would that be get yourself into an environment where you're surrounded by bright people and who will talk to you?
Yes, and openness is tremendously important. Trust and openness, actually.
So how do you handle that? We're running out of time. Oh, no. How do you handle openness? Because, you have a great idea, you have a great question, you're doing the work. Do you tell everybody about it?
Yes, you do. Absolutely. It's terribly important, that. And lots of young people think that somebody's going to steal their ideas. Well, frankly, if you had an idea, I wouldn't want to steal it because it was your idea. That'd be stupid, right? But a lot of people think that, and this is very destructive, actually. I mean, that was one of the great things in Cambridge. It's also one of the great things in the field where I was lucky enough to land up in the cell cycle. We talked to each other fantastically, but we all worked on slightly different aspects, different organisms, different aspects, and the result was that we could freely discuss without feeling that we were treading on other people's toes, and that was tremendously creative, actually, and productive. And where you find countries where people are sort of really paranoid and weren't suspicious of each other and won't tell each other anything, those are scientifically backward countries in general.
Okay, we're really running close to the end, but let me just come to this subject of work, hard work. How hard do you have to work? Can you just be creative, or do you really have to work very hard as well to get things done? Hans, you can answer that first.
Well, if you have something really interesting and fascinating, you will automatically work hard.
Doesn't feel like hard work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you do put in an awful lot of hours,
Yes.
and you think about it an awful lot.
It doesn't feel like...
It doesn't feel like work, though.
Yeah.
No.
It's like working on your hobby
Yeah.
And getting paid to do so.
and
Yes.
getting paid.
Not a lot.
Why not? But
Yeah.
getting paid is not important except for the fact that it gives you freedom to work on your hobby, that you don't have to do other jobs.
Yeah. I remember Michael Levitt saying exactly that. Don't tell anybody, but they are paying us for it.
You've got the dream situation. Last words, Finn?
No.
No, we are incredibly lucky that we get paid for doing what we love to do. And I suppose more recently we get paid even more than we were used to.
And we're also lucky in another respect, actually. I think probably all of us stumbled on something, luckily, and were smart enough to grab it while it passed.
To some extent, that has to be the case, yes.
But you're doing a very important job, being paid for it, but doing a very important job reminding people to stick with what they're passionate about. And that's where the success will come. So thank you very much indeed. That was absolutely perfect. Please join me in thanking all our Nobel laureates. Okay, that's it from all of us. There are going to be a couple of closing remarks, but we can go that way.
Great.
So, thank you all.
We will now move on to the closing remarks, but please give us a few moments while we prepare the stage. I would like to ask Mrs. Laura Sprechman, Deputy CEO of Nobel Media AB, to the stage. Mrs. Sprechman, please.
Your Excellencies, dear Nobel laureates, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for attending this Nobel Prize Dialogue Tokyo 2018. I think we all feel like after a tasty, nutritious, long, and shared meal. We started off this morning asking ourselves whether we could feed 10 billion people. We discussed the several aspects, such as sustainable agriculture, how we handle it, the access to food, the importance of farmers, and of course the function of soil. This challenge of feeding the world is not new. Back in the 1940s, a young man named Norman Borlaug struggled with it as well. As a plant pathologist, he worked on a program to improve agriculture in Mexico. Yields were poor, people were hungry. The wheat they planted was attacked by fungus. Through hard scientific work, Borlaug managed to breed a special type of wheat that was resistant to fungus. Later, he also created a shorter wheat that could absorb more fertilizer and cope with strong winds. Yields climbed fast. By 1956, Mexico had become self-sufficient in wheat. Other countries asked Borlaug for advice. In the mid-1960s, he introduced his special dwarf wheat into India and Pakistan, and production increased enormously. He worked closely with farmers, realizing that to succeed, he needed to learn from them and to collaborate. We're going to teach you to be rebels, not with guns, but with science and technology, he told them. Borlaug was convinced that his knowledge-based approach would pay off. It did. Borlaug's Green Revolution shows us how research and collaboration can help us address our biggest challenges, such as feeding a growing population. In 1970, Norman Borlaug was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Yes, peace. This is a good example of how science contributes to peace and prosperity. But it also reminds us that prosperity carries with it a responsibility of taking care of our ecosystems and of our planet. You could argue that each single Nobel Prize, in a way, contributes to peace, since it's awarded to those who have conferred the greatest benefit to mankind. In the future, we may see more examples like Borlaug, scientists being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for addressing big societal challenges, such as the scientists at IPCC, who in 2007 were awarded the Peace Prize for sharing key findings about climate change. Dialogues like the one we've had today, where scientists, policymakers, and other learners and the business community come together, are intended to make us understand, learn, and share, and hopefully also act based on that knowledge. I would like to thank our distinguished Nobel laureates and all speakers for stimulating discussions today and for making us think. A warm thanks to the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science, JSPS, Dr. Yoshiro Anzai, Dr. Mariko Kobayashi, and all the team of JSPS. Thank you to our dear Nobel International partners for supporting us in our work. Thank you to the Embassy of Sweden on this special anniversary year. And last but not least, thank you to the entire Nobel Media team and our colleagues from the Nobel Foundation for bringing all this to life together with JSPS. Thank you all of you for attending. It's been a real pleasure. And I hope to see you again soon, maybe in Japan, not in a too distant future. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask Dr. Yuichiro Anzai, President of the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science, to come forward. Dr. Anzai, please.
Thank you very, very much for attending to this last moment. It was a long day, but I hope that it was short day for all of you who thought much about food, rated things from the nutrition, health, or care, or anything, economy, culture, and disaster, and particularly science and technology. I'd like to thank to all of you, the general audience first. I hope that you got something here and keep having something for long. I also would like to thank too many people. First of all, I'd like to thank the Nobel Foundation, Lars Heggensten, and his colleagues. Then I should thank to Nobel Media, sorry. ごめんなさい.
Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, I should thank to Laura, of course, Laura Sprechman, and I'd like to thank Adam Smith, who has been a great moderator today. And of course, I'd like to thank the Swedish Embassy, our Ambassador Robak and his colleagues, and event partners and support organizations. They have played a very important role for us. And of course, to Nobel laureates who gave great talks right now, and also distinguished panelists today. And then I'd like to add to my colleagues, our JSPS people. They worked very hard for today. Thank you very much to all of you. We started with Professor Osmi's talk about autophagy and ended with the Nobel laureates' talks. This is Yokohama. It was 150 years ago when Japan moved from feudalism to modern society. Yokohama was a special part of it. Still, Yokohama is a key place to be open to other countries and regions, to the world. I'm very much happy, very happy to have had this event here in Yokohama, because food, the future of food, should be open to everyone, to open to the world. Japan and particularly JSPS is willing to support basic science and basic research, and the food science and technology and related fields should be much more flourished from our public today, of course. And I hope that you remember today for long for thinking about food. So thank you very much again for all of you. This is the end of today's event, but I hope I could see you again very soon. Thank you so very much. Tak so mycket. Thank you.
Thank you for participation today. An announcement from the Secretariat. To the panelists, special guests, and others taking part in the HOPE meeting, please follow our staff members who will guide you to your next venue. Please leave any large belongings at the cloakroom on the first floor. And to the rest of our audience, please remain in your seats for a few moments. 本日はご参加いただきまして誠にありがとうございました。ここで事務局よりお知らせがございます。パネリスト、スペシャルゲスト、ホープミーティング参加者はスタッフが誘導を行いますので、ただいまよりご移動をお願いいたします。大きなお荷物は1階クロークにお預けください。その他の皆様は今しばらくお席にてお待ちください。今後の運営の参考といたしまして、皆様のご意見をお聞かせいただきたく、後ほどご登録いただきましたメールアドレスの方へアンケートをお送りさせていただきます。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。 We would like to hear your impression of the dialogue today. We will be emailing a questionnaire form to the email addresses that you have registered with us, and we would be grateful if you could complete this form and share your impression with us. Thank you. 以上をもちまして、ノーベルプライズダイアログ東京2018を終了いたします。本日はご参加いただきまして誠にありがとうございました。ご使用になられました同時通訳レシーバーは出口で回収させていただきます。お持ち帰りにならないようご協力よろしくお願いいたします。お帰りの際はお忘れ物などございませぬようお気をつけてお帰りください。またクロークにお預けになりましたお荷物もお取り忘れのないようお気をつけください。本日はありがとうございました。Thank you very much. Thank you very much for participating today. Please return the simultaneous interpretation receivers at the exit. We ask for your cooperation to make sure that they are not taken back with you. Please be careful as you leave and make sure that you take all your belongings with you. Please also do not forget any coats or bags that you may have left in the cloakroom. Once again, thank you very much for joining us today.